Okay, so welcome everybody to this session today, and really thank you for joining me as well, because there's a really sterling lineup of sessions today. So delighted and honoured that you have joined this session or chosen to join it. You made the decision to join it today. So let's think about this. Decisions beyond pros and cons. That's our topic for today, and that's with me, Janine Waldman. So nice to meet you. And let's just have a check-in. Think about it. What's one decision you've made today? And if you want to write that in the chat, that would be wonderful. I was thinking like the first decision I made this morning at 6 o'clock was I woke up and thought, should I go for a walk? Or perhaps I'll stay in bed for an extra hour. That was the first decision I made. Yeah, Anita made the wise decision to come to the session. Yeah, Julia, that was the second decision I made this morning. What shall I wear? So yeah. What other decisions? Yes, which other session? What to eat for lunch? Absolutely, always a significant decision. Where do I have to go? Very important. To let you and Matt, did you decide that that was a good idea? You did. Should you go for a run, Bernard? Yes, I know. I felt that one too. To prioritize this conference instead of writing. I hope that was a good choice for you, Gunnar, as well. So those of you that are joining us, we're just checking in and thinking about sharing one decision you've made today. Okay. So we can see there's a wide and varied range of decisions, and this really ties into our topic for today. From the moment we wake up, we're making decisions. Many are quick and easy, others take a little more mental energy, or they can even keep us awake or get us stuck, right? And clients often bring all types of decisions to coaching sessions. So should I take this job, even though it means a significant pay cut? Do I move to Norway with my partner or stay here and build my business? Is specializing better than being a generalist? We hear all sorts of decisions. And this and other topics people bring to sessions. And I've been thinking about this a lot. All right, how can we be useful to them in what's often a short amount of time? And how do we leave minimum footprint so that they do what's best for them? This idea of decision making and how can we be helpful, really? And I sometimes find these sessions quite tough, decision making sessions, when people come along and they've got a really weighty decision on their mind. You know, I feel a responsibility in some way. So that's this session, and that's what we're going to explore today. So firstly, why I entitled it Beyond Pros and Cons. Why is it that? And what's our role as coaches, as solutions-focused coaches in the process? We're going to share some tips. So I'm going to invite you to share what's for you, and also share, I've been asking this question, exploring it for some time now. So I'm going to share some tips with you and things I've picked up. And we're going to experience an MCT, that's a micro coaching tool. And this is something that was developed for this explicit purpose, to help coaches when this topic arose in the conversation. So pros and cons, let's just talk about that for a moment. So, you know, pros and cons, a lot of experts tell us that if we list pros and cons, kind of sounds sensible, right? Pros, for, against. Yeah, I've noticed that people go around in circles with pros and cons, you know, each pro cancelling out a con or vice versa, or they make a compelling argument for each option and it brings them to a standstill. Have you ever done that? You know, let's think about this. Should I go to Norway, for example? Should I go and live in Norway? Pro, salaries are relatively high. Con, it can be challenging to find work. Pro, it offers an outdoor lifestyle. Con, life moves slower. Some say it's boring. Pro, there's a very low crime rate. Con, alcohol is very expensive in Norway. And we keep going, right? Pros and cons. And not only can it lead to stuckness, this balancing, it's a bit like impartial news coverage. You know, what do we think? What do we know? What I've noticed is I find myself getting involved, right? They're convincing me of either option. And I've actually been horrified to notice that at times I've started to have an opinion about what my clients should do. And I know that's not what I'm there to do, right? I know that. I've been coaching for a fair old while. So a question for you is, what in your view is our role as SF coaches in the decision-making process? And you can put it in the chat or unmute yourself. What in your view is our role? What are we there for? They come to a coaching session or someone asks us to help them make a decision. What do you perceive our role to be? To satisfy their needs. Oh, that's big. Heather, if you want to expand on that, that's wonderful. But yes, to help them meet their needs. Yeah. To help them find priorities. To help them move forward. And I guess that links in with satisfying needs. To help them move closer to some clarity. So we're exploring this idea of clarity. And then Catherine, yeah, something it's nice again, meeting their needs to make decisions that they're happy with. To find their own solutions. Yes, Gillian, that's a real strong, coaching. Let's help them find their own solutions, find the outcome they're really looking for. So really nice thoughts there, a range of we're helping them think it through, move forward, get clarity. Oh, and Julia, to help them to their preferred future. So there will be some context, making a decision within the context of what they want. And so it struck me that sometimes it's not the decision itself that's especially tricky, right? It's the knots that we tangle ourselves up in. And as we respond to that pressure, we kind of tell ourselves a story, and maybe we lack confidence, or maybe our clients lack confidence. And sometimes rather than focusing on the content of the decision, we can pay attention to process, if that makes some sense. So their actual decision-making process. So in addition to all the super things you've said there, I started to think that our role is to kind of facilitate that process in broad terms, to support our clients to gently advance their thinking rather than forcing an outcome. So taking the pressure off and creating that fluidity. And I kind of like a good analogy. And to me, it's a bit like a good pot of tea, right? A decision needs time to brew. And we're there to kind of help people think it through and for this to brew. So rather than weighing up options, I think that there are many other things we consider, like exploring the process, building confidence, and helping people untangle their thoughts. How does that sound to you? Any thoughts, comments, observations, questions? Yeah, Catherine?
In what you've described, are you partly or wholly talking about opening up the implications of the different decisions, or really focusing on the actual process that they're bringing?
Both, really. But yes, sometimes it is just the process, building confidence in their ability to make a decision. So I think we can do more than just look at that decision sometimes in its binariness.
Can you give me an example, or is that skipping ahead too far?
That is skipping ahead a little bit. So I'm going to sow those seeds for now. But I'm just inviting us to think perhaps more broadly. And perhaps you're already doing that. I know there's very experienced coaches on this call, but rather than just the content of the decision, should I stay or should I go? Because that's quite binary, that we can perhaps explore how they make decisions and process as well, and untangling their thoughts around it and their emotions connected to it. So if everyone's okay with that, I'm going to invite you to have a discussion about this and to share your experiences. So I'm going to invite you in groups to share your tips when you're coaching clients who are struggling to make decisions. Okay, what do you do as an SF coach? So do I take this offer? Should I do X or Y? What path should I take? And we're going to be in groups of 4 or 5, if that's okay with you, groups of 4 or 5, and have up to 10 minutes. And then when we get back, we'll hear them. So really do listen to your colleagues, share your great ideas. And when you come back, be ready to share some points from your discussions. So make sure 1 or 2 things or something you've heard that someone else has inspired you, maybe a super idea you've had. Or even something that's occurred to you between the breakout room and when you get back here. We'll hear your tips and then we'll share some thoughts on top of that. So invitations to the rooms are coming. We'll have up to 10 minutes. You'll see me drop in. So I'll come and say hello. And yeah, enjoy the conversations. You'll get a 1-minute warning when it's time to come back. And as you know, you'll be magically transported here. And the question is in the chat box for you as well. So I'm going to open the rooms now. Welcome back from what sounded like rich and thoughtful discussions when I had the pleasure of dropping in. Let's hear 1 or 2 points for now from each group. So let's start with Amanda, Anita et al. Who's going to share with us what your thoughts were? What did you decide, explore, discuss? What pearls of wisdom are you sharing with us? If any, of course.
I'm happy to share a bit because I spoke quite a bit, but I think one thing we explored was the difference between when you feel maybe you're drawn to a particular aspect of the decision and that naturally you have a strong view or a sense of what would be best for the person, or even where you feel that it is a binary decision, that can be tricky. But I was sharing something where I genuinely had no sense of what was right for the person, because it had to do with inviting a certain relative that she'd never talked to me about before to her wedding. And I just had no idea. And so I just exempted myself from any sense of knowing anything. And I just was very much listening and curious, questioning, you know, supposing you did get a bit of momentum, a bit of movement, what would you notice?
Yeah.
And it was very powerful.
Yeah.
And Catherine, you were sharing your very different, very, very huge situation of somebody wanting to make a decision about a baby, where you had a sense of being drawn to the pros versus the cons. So yeah, we talked a little bit about when it's weighty and there's a sense of one way or the other, it can really be difficult to support that process.
So that's a really nice question you're asking there. How would you notice you were on your way to be making a decision how would you know you're on your way? Which is quite nice. And that's interesting that we, you know, that we have a sense of what they should do, but how on earth can we know? so that curiosity, I know. And it's I was once coaching a young woman and she couldn't decide whether she should take a job that paid her £10,000 less. All right. And by the end of the session, she convinced both of us she shouldn't. And then she took the job and it was the best decision she'd ever made. So I know what's right for her. And it's just a real good sense check, actually, because and our decisions, are they binary ever is the other question. Or is that just how we talk about them? It's interesting. Thank you, Anita. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that, Catherine? Because I know it was a very
I had a couple of flashes of something in there. First of all, I'd like to say that when I spoke to my supervisor after the pros and cons baby discussion, she suggested asking a lot of what difference would that make questions about having made the decision. Another thing that occurred to me as we were talking in the group was the wise old self option, which is where you put yourself in a completely different situation, which is the future where you've made the right decision, and consider what would tell you that it had been the right decision.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
you might get some completely, I think you might get some new insight in that about what it is that's really driving you.
Lovely. Suppose it's sometime in the future. How would you know you'd made a good decision? What might you notice? It's lovely, isn't it? Really nice. Yeah.
And also I stumbled upon what I think maybe you're getting at, which is the asking people how confident they are about making the decision, and then asking them lots of questions about how they could increase their confidence.
Yeah, because sometimes it's not the decision. People don't believe that they can make a good decision for all sorts of reasons, and they can convince us. I've been convinced that people can't, that they make terrible decisions. I always make bad decisions because of this, but yes, absolutely, really, really nice. Thank you, group. And Bernard, Gillian, Jane, Linda, what?
May I ask a question?
Oh yeah, please do.
This confidence scale, is it how confident are you about making a decision at all, or how confident are you that you're going to make a good decision or the right decision?
We're actually going to try that out in a moment, and I have how confident are you that you'll make a satisfactory. I like the word satisfactory sometimes. It's sometimes less weighted than good. How do you make a satisfactory decision? Yeah. So that's, yes, we're gonna actually, that's built into my MCT. So you guys are on it. Yeah. Next group, what do we have? What do you have in addition to what we've heard?
I can share a bit. Gillian came up with a really nice way of encapsulating it. Ensure the client is asking the right questions of themselves, because often they do get stuck on the, is it A or B? But actually it's almost irrelevant whether it's A or B. It's the what difference does that make, and what's the sort of the end, the destination versus the sort of route to what they actually want. And I shared an example of a client who was like, well, should I get divorced from a really abusive husband, or so should I stay with my abusive husband, or get divorced, which is culturally not sanctioned in the culture that she came from? And it's one of those, oh my God, what, how on earth could you possibly know? And we focused on what difference it would make. And for her, it was about the strength to make the right decision. And we spent 2 or 3 sessions on exceptions and, how on earth she'd survived so far and blah, blah, blah. And at the end, she's like, I don't need to make the decision. I can go back to him and see how it goes and just spend more time away from him. She had an option to be in a different place and focus on what I want to do with my retirement. And so she didn't have, so the decision was no longer relevant. She knew that she'd be able to cope no matter what happened. So I think it's kind of checking with the clients, what is it they actually want from us.
That's
and
lovely.
Then the other,
oh, it just is, because it's showing how we think a decision is binary, and it's not. We ask people what is it that they want, what will it give them, that they start to see possibilities, and they can do things while they're making that decision as well, or the next steps are part of that process rather than having to be at that end point. Yeah, thanks, Jane. And you were going to say?
Yeah, the other thing is often I say, well, suppose 10 out of 10 is you're completely clear what decision you're going to make, and 0 is the opposite. Where are you already? And I'm often surprised how high people are. It's not about which route to take, but it's the confidence in taking that. So then we can look at, well, is it about increasing your confidence, or is it about more, you need some more information, what's going, and how would you know you're even a little bit clearer about what way you're going to go? And that's often a really nice one.
Yeah, how clear, how close. Scales are super, aren't they? Because they give us this option of movement. So we're no longer in the land of A or B. We're in the land of movement, up or down. Yeah. Thank you. And our other group, Alexander et al. But Alexander, it's because you're at the front, so because it's alphabetical. Alexander, Huber, Julia, Mariana, and Safina, what do you have for us?
We admitted to some guilt that, in fact, we had publicly had opinions and all about ourselves.
I know.
You're joining a big club.
I know, but we could say this is just between us, but this is being recorded, so sorry. Yeah, go on, Julia. Oh, Julia, you've just muted yourself. Can you unmute yourself?
Yep. What will be possible for you if you made the right decision was one question we had. Another was, if you woke up tomorrow and you could make the right decision, what would be different? What would you have?
So what's possible? What are the benefits? And then life beyond having made the decision. So, or the fact that you are making the decision. You wake up tomorrow and you can make the decision. Nice. Another use of the future. Thank you. Wow.
Others may have something else.
Yeah, I was going to say, what else from all the discussions you had or that's occurred to you as we've been chatting? Or should I say, is there anything else? All right, it's super tips, and I've got some thoughts as well. And which I shall share. So actually these are, it says more tips, but actually they really echo yours. Let's have a look. So I've been thinking about this, and actually I took this to supervision. I've been asking my colleagues relentlessly about what they think, and I've been thinking about it myself. So versions of the ones you've talked about. Suppose tomorrow you wake up and you're on your way to making a satisfactory decision. How would you know? So we're actually in it, we're on our way. Suppose it's a month from now, list 10 things you'd notice that would let you know you'd made a good decision. I really like that. That's the one you mentioned as well, Catherine, is suppose it's sometime in the future, how would you notice that you've made a good decision? And I guess we could do, how would you notice you've made a not so good decision if we really wanted to? So we're taking people forward, had huge amounts. I had a guy who wanted to list all the reasons he shouldn't apply for a job. So I said, do you want the job? He said, yes. I said, so, you know, how would you know that you were a good candidate down the track or you've made a good decision? And he just switched on. It's a very long case, but it really unlocks people. On a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is you've decided and 0 is you've no idea, where are you now? Again, when have you made satisfactory decisions in the past? You know, all of you made decisions today, right? What to wear, to turn up here. I'm hoping that's satisfactory. You know, what to have for breakfast. We've all got experience of making decisions. How have we done that? And how to do that? Often that really helps people. We can scale for confidence, which we're going to explore in a little bit more detail. And also, what can you be getting on with whilst this decision's brewing? I quite often share the analogy that decisions brew. I used to say they percolated like a coffee percolator, but no one uses coffee percolators anymore. But like explain the idea that they brew, take the pressure off, literally, and let people think, well, what can I be getting on with whilst it's brewing? And then people feel less pressured in themselves. And you might have picked up that I really like a good metaphor as well. So brewing and so on. And here's one that I've kind of been trying on for size as well. And it introduces this idea of fluidity into the process. So that actually, I think some people feel that if they take a decision, that's it. But actually, it's part of an ongoing process. And I've invited people to kind of, I mean, you can think about it yourself. Just suppose that whatever you chose to wear tomorrow would be the clothes that you'd have to wear every day for the rest of your life. Right. How would that be for you? I mean, for me, oh God, smart, casual, which color? What happens if I gain weight? You know, God, it would just be never ending. It would be tough to decide. And I don't know about you, but I would never get dressed, right? And so get people to think about that. And then if you carry on the analogy, if you think about our wardrobes in real life are far more flexible. So we know that whatever we put on will be just for that day, or perhaps even part of it. You know, if you think about it, for me, I can replace my early morning yoga gear before I head out to lunch with a client, and I might go for a complete change. Or if I'm really short of time, I'll keep my black leggings on and switch to a more suitable top. So the idea of today's clothes forever is a really ridiculous proposition, right? It's just ridiculous in some ways. And if we think of other pressing decisions that people come with, you know, should I take this job? Is that if rather than agonizing over them as if whatever we do will be a permanent fix, and obviously there are varying types of decision, but with a lot of them, we can approach them as we do getting dressed and accept the choice for the moment. And if it's not right, we can change and adapt it. So we just introduce this fluidity, and it sometimes takes the pressure off people, that analogy as well. And it also resonates. Has anyone read Susan Jeffers' Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway? Really old book. I love it because she has a whole chapter on decision making, and she talks about how you make a decision and you adapt and flex as you go. Reading that really changed my mind, because I changed my life because I really struggled with decisions, and then I realized that actually I could change, adapt and flex afterwards. And equally,
can you say that again?
Which
Can you say that title again?
Oh, Susan Jeffers, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I think it's a lovely book, and she has a whole chapter on decision making, and she talks about win-win decisions and how we should, you know, think about what works. But she has a lovely diagram that talks about it's not so much about the decision, it's what we do beyond the decision and having the courage to adapt and flex afterwards. Which is the same, yeah. And then you know, if wardrobes aren't people's things, the idea that we're on a journey, and that if you go hiking, you know, you've got a general sense of direction, but you can see this woman, she'll turn the corner and the view will change, and she'll have a different view, and she might choose to take a different step. And that also introduces the idea of small steps and making micro choices as we go along. So I do like a good metaphor and a story. And Catherine, yeah, really nice as well. Catherine, is there anything more you want to say about that, about what the priorities are, what features of a good decision making?
Well, they were kind of coming, these thoughts came up out of what you were saying, which is the idea of flexibility. So there's so much that's unknown when you're making decisions. Then maybe it would be a good opportunity to ask the client, well, what would you like to be prioritizing most, making decisions generally, or what would be what would be the most important things for you to be considering? That might then allow them to sort of again get more of a macro view of the main drivers.
Absolutely. Quite often in career coaching, I'll just ask people, what are their criteria? What's important to them? You know, they're saying, what shall I do with my life? And I'm saying, well, what's important to you? So I might not say, what would you prioritize? Because it's, you know, it's like, and yeah, all of a sudden we've opened it up again. It's not, should I do this or that? It's giving them a framework and flexibility. So there's so much in there. And that's, I guess that comes back to where I felt what our role is. We're facilitating that process rather than delivering a decision a lot of the time.
Janine, can I just say something that reminds me of the idea of at your best? Supposing you were facing this decision at your best, what would you notice?
Absolutely.
Might bring people into that space of, when they're in a good decision-making frame of mind, what's different and all of that stuff, more process.
Really
oriented.
nice. Yeah, that's nice. You're at your best. So we're taking our best selves to our decision. So many choices that we can play with, and also not expecting that they'll come to a decision in the session, right? The one I told you about, the £10,000, she convinced herself that she should stick with the money and not the job. And then she wrote to me 3 days later and said, I'm still agonizing over it. I said, and I must admit, I wrote back, it was on WhatsApp, and I said, oh, well, you know, both decisions sound, you know, whatever you do, you know, they sound, you've thought them through, but it's what you do after the decision that's important, or something like that. I used my Susan Jeffers quote, and then a couple of days later, she'd made the decision. So I think their process carries on after our conversation. So we're kind of reorganizing things. And we talked about scaling for confidence, and there's been a number of points that have come up. And so I'm going to share this decision making, what we're calling an MCT, micro coaching session. And this kind of came about a couple of years ago. I was working with someone, a coach you might know called Regina Reinhardt. Some of you may know her. And we were working for BGRS and their intercultural consultancy. And this was Regina's idea, actually. And they provide training to people who relocate. So if you move from the UK to China or something, they provide absolute training. You get a trainer who helps you adapt to a different culture. And these people were trainers, content trainers, okay? And they'd realized that rather than just giving people information, that it was good to kind of blend topics, to blend it with coaching, because there were some topics that it just didn't work to tell people. There were 3 topics we worked on, and one of them was decision making, because they realized that, you know, when people did have a significant decision in their life, they didn't feel comfortable telling them what to do. They could get so far, you know, should I bow or shake hands? They could answer that question. But when it became more significant, you know, should I bring my children with me? You know, it was far more coach-like. But whilst they were skilled trainers, very few of them were coaches. So we developed what we called micro coaching tools for them. And these are tools that they could pick up and use when they heard the cues, when someone started to speculate. Now, we didn't say you must follow these questions. So this is a set of questions that can be adapted, but it was to give them a taste of it so that they could start asking their clients this and interject where they felt it was appropriate. So we're gonna have a go at this MCT now, if you're up for that. And here it is. I'm gonna put it in the chat. It's got a number of questions. Micro coaching tools, generally something that should take 5 or so minutes. It's quite a long one, but they're all kind of built in. And you'll see here, it's got a lot of things you've talked about. What would the benefits be? How confident are you? What's helped you be that confident? How high do you need to be? What signs will let you know it's up there? And what's a small step in your decision-making journey, with all the questions in between? Okay, so that is our MCT. And my invitation now is for you to pair up with someone and have a go at an MCT. So,
Janine,
yep.
what makes this micro coaching instead of regular coaching? There are a lot of questions here.
Well, this one actually did, we normally say up to 8 questions, but actually this one just got out longer. It's still shorter than an hour's coaching session.
Okay.
And what we also noticed with this group is sometimes they took a question out, or that they, and actually some of them are, when have you made smaller and satisfactory decisions before? How did you do that? They're actually almost the same question. We just broke it down because bear in mind, these aren't coaches. Some of these follow-up questions you would ask intuitively. You're at this point on the scale. How would you know? So actually, if you'll see it, there's a couple there. Is that okay? So micro coaching, small, and it's definitely smaller than an hour-long session. So, so the invitation is for you to have a discussion with your partner. We're gonna have 8 minutes. So that's either 4 minutes each way or 8 minutes one way. Would that be okay? You can decide how you want to use the time, because some of you might have decisions to make, some of you might not. So you can use the 8 minutes in whichever way you want. When you get into pairs, the person that answers the questions is the person that says, I've got a decision to make. Will you ask me some questions to help me think it through? So please be thinking of a decision you have to make. At least one of you have a go one way through. Get as far as you can in the time available. Are you up for that? My guess is...
Sorry, Janine, can I just say I'm going to have to leave halfway through anyway. So if you, I'll leave now so I don't mess up the numbers halfway through the conversation. So thank you so much for today.
Okay, thanks, Jane.
Bye.
Okay, so I'm going to open the rooms. 8 minutes. Get as far as you can. Do swap over if you get a chance. But have some people got a decision to be thinking about? Yeah, so there are people there. So have a go. Try it out and see where it takes you. Invites are coming to the rooms now. Hmm.
Mhm.
I'll let you know later. Welcome back. How was that?
It was fascinating.
Oh gosh, tell us more.
Do you know what, that word, changing the word right for satisfactory, is enormously powerful. Enormously powerful. So I was asked the question about how confident was I making about making the right decision. And you know, that really made me feel the weight on my shoulders. It really felt really onerous. And I kind of went, oh, ouch. That's really quite uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But as soon as it was changed for the word satisfactory, I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. That's fine.
Yeah, it's in there. You're right. I very rarely ask good. It was more for variety. So you're right. Satisfactory. It's a lovely word, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good
Then
enough.
anything's possible. It's flexible. It's changeable. It's grey. It's not black or white. It's not binary.
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. A few other nods. Let's hear one or two final reflections on that. If there were any.
I haven't really got a reflection other than I wish I had more time with Alexander, because he sounds like he's got a big decision to make. But we did the scale, and what was interesting is by looking at the scale and what would tell you you're going up the scale question, it introduced a kind of time scale that wasn't there before. So it kind of made me think like the decision, there was a set of things that could be done before taking a decision. And that to me opened something around the time scale involved and any sense of urgency. So we didn't that's just something I left just as the breakout room kicked us out. But that was that was just an insight that popped into my head as we were doing it. That it felt like an immediate decision, but actually there was an element of time and change could happen before the decision was made.
Nice.
Things changed before you had to make a decision. So that's stayed with me.
It's lovely. And actually addressing, as professional coaches, a lot of your experienced coaches, it will take you longer. But when we ran this with non-coaches, they got through those questions quite quick. Yep. It's really interesting to see the difference. But also, so do take that. There's a set of questions in there, rearrange them. Yeah, Alexander.
Yes, may I say a couple of words. So, Matt was my partner of this exercise, and thank you, Matt, for very precise questions. That's one thing, but in general, that has reminded me of several aspects of decisions area. In general, something like, well, quite often the decisions are already made.
Absolutely.
And then there's a saying. There's a saying I once read in a calendar, something like, when someone is asking for advice, it's not advice that he's asking for, it's accomplice.
Oh, nice. Absolutely. That's really nice. So, well, I hope you found that useful. And just a final analogy and reflection is that this analogy I really like. It's like a ball of string. You know, when people come to us, they're sometimes tied in knots. And that if we force the decision, you can see it here, that we're pulling, the string gets tighter, right? And that a way to loosen a ball of wool or a knot is to just gently, we might insert something and just loosen it up. And then little bits of ends start to emerge, right? And in the decision-making process, I think all of these things kind of help loosen it up. This is my kind of analogy for coaching, but also very poignant for decision-making. So that brings our time together to a close. We've explored, you know, our role, shared tips, how to go. And just to finish up, just to say, do keep in touch. It's been lovely there working with you. quick plug for our open program. We've got some 90-minute webinars and a 2-day career coaching course come up, and I've just put the link there. So if you're interested to learn more, that is wonderful. So yes, I just say thank you very much for your attention, input, and deciding to join me today. It's made my day better, so I really appreciate that too. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Janine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janine. Thank you, everyone.
And thanks, Gillian, too,
Thanks,
And-
Anita.
and the first group.